Ever wonder what happens when Hollywood's biggest stars collide in the Texas desert? Giant wasn't just an epic film. It was a 3-hour drama, both on and off screen. From drunken mishaps that nearly ruined key scenes to mysterious lights that haunted James Dean, this classic hid secrets darker than the oil wells it depicted. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about Giant. Fact 1. Dean's voice wasn't always his own. When James Dean died in a tragic car accident on September 30, 1955, the film Giant was still in post-production, and director George Stevens faced an unusual problem. Dean had completed all of his on-camera work, but several key lines from his climactic drunken banquet scene were completely inaudible. The young actor's intense method approach to the scene had resulted in dialogue so slurred and mumbled that audiences wouldn't be able to understand a single word. Normally, actors return to the studio after filming raps to re-record problematic dialogue in a process called looping, but Dean would never make it back to complete this essential task. Stevens needed someone who could convincingly mimic Dean's distinctive voice and speech patterns for the crucial sequence where his character, Jet Rink, delivers a drunken speech at the grand opening of his hotel. The solution came from an unexpected source. Nick Adams, a young actor who had been Dean's close friend and former roommate, was brought in to save the scene. Adams knew Dean intimately and could do a remarkable impersonation of his friend's voice. To achieve the proper drunk slur while keeping the words understandable, Adams stuffed his cheeks with wads of chewing gum and carefully re-recorded the lines to match Dean's on-screen lip movements. The dubbing work was so seamless that audiences never detected the switch, and the scene went on to be cited as one of Dean's most powerful performances in the film. Eerily, Nick Adams himself would die under mysterious circumstances just over a decade later in 1968 in what was ruled a possible suicide by drug overdose. Fact 2. The daughter was older than mom. One of the strangest casting quirks in Giant involves the ages of its actors playing family members across multiple generations. Carol Baker, who portrayed Luce Benedict II, the spirited daughter of Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor's characters, was actually 9 months older than Elizabeth Taylor herself in real life. When filming began, Baker was 24 years old, while Taylor was just 23. Yet Baker convincingly played Taylor's child, who grows from a teenager into a middle-aged woman over the course of the film's sweeping timeline. The age discrepancy becomes even more noticeable when you consider that Baker was also only 9 years younger than Rock Hudson, who played her father in the story. Director George Stevens deliberately chose to cast younger actors and age them throughout the film, rather than hiring older established stars and attempting to make them look younger in early scenes, which was the typical Hollywood approach at the time. This unconventional decision meant the entire cast had to master the art of portraying characters who age roughly 25 years over the course of the nearly 3.5-hour epic. For Baker, this was her film debut and introduction to Hollywood audiences, though she had already been studying at the prestigious Actors Studio in New York alongside method acting legends. The role launched her career, and immediately after finishing Giant, she went on to film Baby Doll, for which she received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Despite the awkward real-life age dynamic, none of the cast members' actual ages undermined the believability of their on-screen family relationships, a testament to their skilled performances and the makeup department's work in aging them convincingly. Fact 3. Hungover wedding scene became movie magic. Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor formed an instant friendship when production began on Giant, bonding over late-night conversations and shared bottles of vodka and chocolate. Their camaraderie nearly derailed one crucial scene in the most unexpected way. On one particular evening early in the Marfa, Texas shoot, Hudson and Taylor went out for drinks to get to know each other better as co-stars and scene partners. What started as a casual evening of socializing quickly turned into an all-night drinking session that didn't end until 3 o'clock in the morning. Unfortunately for the bleary-eyed pair, they had an early call time of 5:30 in the morning to film an important wedding scene. The scene required them to gaze lovingly at each other as newlyweds, but mercifully for their pounding headaches and churning stomachs, It contained no dialogue whatsoever. As the cameras rolled, both actors were focused entirely on what's task, not throwing up on camera. They concentrated so intensely on keeping their nausea under control and maintaining their composure that something magical happened. The intense concentration on their faces, combined with their slightly glassy-eyed expressions and the vulnerable, almost pained looks they were trying to suppress, read beautifully on camera. Crew members watching the scene unfold began openly crying on set, completely convinced they were witnessing genuine looks of deep adoration and love between the newlywed characters. Director George Stevens was reportedly pleased with the raw emotion captured in the take. Neither Hudson nor Taylor had the heart to tell anyone that the emotion everyone found so moving was actually them desperately fighting waves of hangover nausea. The scene remains in the final film as a tender moment between the couple. Fact 4. Dean got actually drunk for drunk scene. James Dean's commitment to method acting reached controversial extremes during the filming of Giant's climactic banquet scene. In this pivotal sequence, Dean's character Jet Rink, now a wealthy but deeply troubled oil tycoon, hosts an extravagant party at his new hotel to celebrate his success. The scene required Rink to deliver a rambling, incoherent speech while completely intoxicated, eventually collapsing in a pathetic heap before his assembled guests. Rather than simply acting drunk, Dean decided to actually get drunk for the performance, showing up on set genuinely intoxicated and 3 sheets to the wind. While his physical performance was visually compelling and captured the stumbling, unsteady movements of a man who had consumed far too much alcohol, Dean's extreme approach created a serious technical problem. His dialogue became so slurred, mumbled, and incomprehensible that the sound department couldn't salvage a single usable word from the recording. Dean essentially became too drunk to speak clearly enough for the microphones to pick up intelligible dialogue. The actor believed this level of authenticity would bring truth to the performance, but what he actually created was unusable footage that would require extensive post-production work to fix. Since Dean was still needed to return for standard looping sessions where actors re-record their dialogue, the production team planned to have him come back and redo all the lines once he was sober. Tragically, Dean died in his car accident before he could complete this necessary dubbing work, forcing the production to bring in his friend Nick Adams to save the scene. The incident illustrated both Dean's intense dedication to his craft and the potential pitfalls of taking method acting too far. Fact 5. Director's brutal response to Dean's death. The news of James Dean's death hit the Giant cast and crew like a thunderbolt. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was killed instantly when his Porsche Spyder collided with another vehicle near Cholome, California. He was only 24 years old. The cast learned of the tragedy while watching dailies, the raw, unedited footage from the day's filming, in a screening room. When director George Stevens stood up and announced that James Dean had just died in a car accident, the room fell into shocked silence. Elizabeth Taylor, who had developed a close friendship with Dean during production, was completely devastated. She had spent many late evenings with him, listening as he vented about his frustrations with Hollywood and his struggles as an actor. The loss hit her harder than anyone else on the production. The very next day, despite Taylor's grief, Stevens insisted that filming continue because they were already behind schedule. He required the inconsolable actress to complete reaction shots for a scene she had previously filmed with Dean. Taylor could barely function through her tears and kept breaking down between takes, which infuriated the already stressed director. At some point during this traumatic day, Taylor reportedly asked Stevens if he could believe such a terrible accident could happen. His cold response became infamous. "Yes, I can. He had it coming. The way he drove, it was inevitable." Taylor was so enraged and hurt by Stevens' callous words that she drove home at dangerous speeds herself, flying through the canyon roads at nearly 100 miles per hour in her fury. She later reflected that perhaps Stevens' harsh comment was his own peculiar way of expressing grief, but Taylor never truly forgave him for forcing her to work the day after losing her friend. Fact 6. The Marfa Mystery Lights. Headlights legend. The small desert town of Marfa, Texas, where much of Giant was filmed, has been famous for over a century for its mysterious ghost lights. These unexplained luminous orbs appear in the night sky near the Chinity Mountains, dancing and flickering in patterns that have baffled observers since the 1880s. The phenomenon was already well-known local folklore when the Giant production arrived in the summer of 1955. James Dean became absolutely transfixed by these mysterious lights during filming. Night after night, he would rush out after shooting Wrapped to watch the strange illuminations appear over the desert landscape. Some accounts say he kept a telescope in his hotel room specifically to observe the lights more closely. Dean's fascination with the Marfa lights added an eerie dimension to his already intense presence on set, and locals remembered him as someone captivated by the supernatural mystery surrounding their town. After Dean's sudden death in his silver Porsche 550 Spyder racing car, something strange began to happen. People claimed the Marfa lights seemed to glow brighter and appear more frequently than before. A haunting myth quickly developed among both locals and Dean fans. The mysterious lights were actually the headlights of James Dean's ghost car, eternally racing through the West Texas desert where he had spent his final weeks alive. The legend persists to this day, with some visitors to the Marfa Lights viewing area claiming they can see a Porsche-shaped outline in the dancing illuminations. While physicists have suggested the lights might be caused by atmospheric conditions or even distant car headlights from Highway 67, the romantic notion of Dean's spirit still racing through the darkness has become inseparable from Marfa's supernatural lore. Fact 7. Stevens shot 875,000 feet of film. Director George Stevens was legendary for his meticulous, perfectionist approach to filmmaking, and Giant became the ultimate showcase of his obsessive attention to detail. Over the course of production, Stevens shot an absolutely staggering 875,000 feet of film, an almost incomprehensible amount of footage for a single movie. To put that massive number in perspective, most feature films of that era would shoot perhaps 50,000 to 100,000 feet of film total. Stevens shot roughly 9 times more footage than a typical production, capturing take after take after take of every scene from multiple angles and with subtle variations in performance. The sheer volume of film represented hundreds of hours of raw footage that would need to be carefully reviewed, evaluated, and edited down to create the final movie. This enormous amount of material meant that post-production on Giant became an epic undertaking in itself. Stevens spent an entire year in the editing room, methodically reviewing all that footage and assembling it into the final 3-hour and 17-minute cut that audiences would eventually see. The editing process took longer than the actual filming had. This painstaking approach reflected Stevens' evolution as a filmmaker. Before serving in World War II, he had been known for lighter entertainment and romantic comedies, but after witnessing the liberation of the Dachau concentration camp and filming the horrors of war firsthand, Stevens became a much more serious and deliberate director. He approached every frame of Giant with intense scrutiny, determined to create something meaningful and lasting. The enormous amount of footage also meant that countless brilliant performances and scenes ended up on the cutting room floor, lost forever. The final result justified Stevens' laborious methods, as Giant went on to earn 10 Academy Award nominations and won Stevens the Oscar for Best Director. Fact 8. California tumbleweeds imported to Texas. When location scouts selected Marfa, Texas as the primary filming location for Giant's vast ranch sequences, they chose the area for its stark, desolate beauty and endless flat plains that stretched to the horizon. The remote West Texas landscape seemed perfect for representing the sprawling Benedict family ranch called Riata. However, the production team quickly discovered an unexpected problem. The authentic Texas location was missing one of the most iconic symbols of the American West. There were no tumbleweeds anywhere to be found in the Marfa area. Those classic rolling bundles of dried vegetation that audiences expected to see blowing across dusty western landscapes simply didn't grow naturally in that particular part of Texas. For director George Stevens, this was unacceptable. The visual language of Western films demanded tumbleweeds rolling dramatically across the barren ranch land, especially during the movie's windswept exterior scenes. Without them, something essential would be missing from the authentic Western atmosphere he was trying to create. The solution required a significant logistical undertaking. Production crews arranged to have an entire truckload of tumbleweeds transported all the way from California, where they grew abundantly, across state lines to the Texas desert. These imported California tumbleweeds were then strategically placed and released during filming to achieve the proper aesthetic. In some scenes, crew members would actually roll the tumbleweeds across the set at the right moments to create that quintessential image of the windswept frontier. It's one of those fascinating Hollywood ironies. A film praised for its authentic portrayal of Texas ranch life was actually using imported California vegetation to create the authentic Texas look that audiences expected to see on screen. Fact 9. Christmas Tree. From Sequoia National Forest, George Stevens' commitment to authenticity extended to even the smallest details in Giant, sometimes to absurd extremes. One particularly elaborate example involved a brief Christmas scene at the Benedict family ranch. The script called for the family to gather around a beautifully decorated Christmas tree during the holiday season, a simple domestic moment that would probably occupy less than a minute of screen time in the final film. However, Stevens wasn't satisfied with using any ordinary Christmas tree or even a realistic artificial one. He wanted something genuinely impressive and authentic that would convey the wealth and grandeur of the Benedict family's lifestyle. Instead of sourcing a tree locally from Texas or even from somewhere nearby, Stevens made an extraordinary decision. Production crews traveled all the way to California's Sequoia National Forest, one of America's most protected and treasured wilderness areas, and cut down a massive Douglas fir tree specifically for this single scene. The enormous tree was then carefully loaded onto transport trucks and hauled across multiple states, traveling roughly 1,200 miles from the California mountains to the flat Texas desert where filming was taking place. The logistics of transporting such a large tree such a great distance must have been considerable, requiring special permits, careful planning, and significant expense. All of this effort and cost was invested for one brief holiday scene in a movie that already ran over 3 hours long. It's the kind of lavish, almost wasteful production detail that exemplifies old Hollywood's golden age approach to filmmaking, where budgets could balloon and practical considerations took a backseat to a director's vision of perfection. The Christmas scene itself is not particularly memorable in the final film, making the elaborate tree procurement seem even more excessive in retrospect. Fact 10. Hudson and Dean's off-screen hatred. The on-screen rivalry between Rock Hudson and James Dean in Giant was so convincing partly because it reflected a genuine animosity between the two actors. Hudson and Dean came from completely different acting traditions and represented opposing philosophies about the craft. Rock Hudson, 29 years old at the time, was a classically trained actor who had worked his way up through the Hollywood studio system. He believed in technical precision, hitting his marks, following the director's instructions, and delivering consistent performances take after take. His approach was professional, reliable, and polished. James Dean, only 24, was the rebellious new face of method acting, fresh from studying at the prestigious Actors Studio in New York. He believed in emotional truth, spontaneity, and living inside his character's psychology. This meant he would frequently change his performance from take to take, sometimes improvise dialogue, arrive late to set, argue with the director, and generally behave in ways that Hudson considered unprofessional and disrespectful. From Hudson's perspective, Dean was an undisciplined upstart whose erratic behavior made everyone's job harder. From Dean's perspective, Hudson was a stiff, uptight studio creation who didn't understand real acting. The tension between them was palpable on set. In one often repeated story, Dean went on strike for 3 days, refusing to work because of conflicts with director Stevens. Hudson was reportedly furious at this disruption. Behind Dean's back, Hudson allegedly referred to the younger actor as difficult and used less flattering terms. The animosity was mutual, with Dean viewing Hudson as everything wrong with traditional Hollywood phoniness. Elizabeth Taylor, who became close friends with both men separately, often found herself in the uncomfortable position of mediating between them and trying to keep the peace on set. Fact 11. Marfa kids paid in quarters for props. When Hollywood descended on Marfa, Texas in the scorching summer of 1955, the small border town of only about 3,600 residents suddenly found itself transformed into a bustling film production hub. The giant production brought employment opportunities to many locals, but it also created some unusual odd jobs for the town's children. Director George Stevens wanted the ranch scenes to look authentically weathered and desolate, which meant he needed large quantities of tumbleweeds scattered across the landscape. Since tumbleweeds didn't naturally grow in the Marfa area and had to be imported from California in bulk, the production still needed help distributing them and gathering them between takes. This is where Marfa's enterprising kids came in. The production company announced they would pay local children 25 cents for every tumbleweed the kids could bring to the set. For children in 1955, when a quarter could buy candy or a comic book, this seemed like an excellent deal. Kids scoured the desert landscape searching for any tumbleweeds they could find, then hauled them to the production site to collect their quarters. Some children reportedly made decent pocket money from this arrangement during the summer shoot. Beyond the tumbleweed economy, many of Marfa's teenagers and younger children were hired as background extras in various crowd scenes, giving them the thrill of appearing in a major Hollywood production. During breaks in filming, director Stevens actively encouraged townspeople to come watch the shooting, visit with the cast and crew, and even participate in the production. This open-door policy was unusual for the time and helped the production maintain good relationships with the community. James Dean was remembered as particularly friendly with local kids, often signing autographs, posing for photos, and buying bottles of Coca-Cola for the children who hung around the set. Fact 12. $250,000. Facade left to crumble. The massive Victorian mansion that served as the Benedict family's ranch house, known as Rieta in the film, was one of Giant's most iconic visual elements. The sprawling three-story structure dominated the flat Texas landscape, appearing in countless scenes throughout the movie as a symbol of the family's wealth and power. However, the impressive mansion had a secret. It wasn't actually a real building at all. Production designer Boris Levin created the Rieta facade as a three-sided structure with no back wall, essentially a gigantic movie set piece. The false front was secured to the ground using 6 telephone poles to keep it stable against the harsh West Texas winds that regularly swept across the plains. At its tallest point, the tower reached 64 feet into the air, while the sprawling porches extended 81 feet across, making it the largest set Warner Brothers had ever constructed at the time. The enormous facade cost $250,000 to build, an astronomical sum in 1955 that would equal several $1,000,000 today. After the facade was completed in California, it was carefully dismantled, loaded onto trains, shipped to Marfa, and then reassembled on the Ryan Ranch about 17 miles west of town by a crew specially imported for the task. All interior scenes were filmed later on sound stages back in Burbank, California. After filming wrapped, rather than dismantling this $250,000 structure and hauling it away, the production simply abandoned it in the desert. For decades, the skeletal remains of the Rieta mansion stood on the private ranch land, slowly deteriorating under the relentless Texas sun and wind. Movie fans and James Dean enthusiasts would make pilgrimages to visit the crumbling ruins, and pieces of the set appeared in later films like Fandango in 1985. Fact 13. Dean promised not to race until filming ended. James Dean's passion for racing fast cars and motorcycles was well known throughout Hollywood and caused considerable anxiety for the Giant production team. Warner Brothers studio executives and director George Stevens were acutely aware that their young star regularly participated in dangerous racing competitions and drove at reckless speeds on public roads. The studio had significant financial investment riding on Dean's safety, as he was needed for months of filming and then for post-production work. Before production began, Stevens sat down with Dean and extracted a serious promise from him. The actor would not race cars or motorcycles while Giant was in production. It was written into his contract and presented as a non-negotiable condition of his employment. Dean, who understood the studio's concerns even if he chafed under the restriction, agreed to the terms and actually kept his promise throughout the entire shoot. He stayed away from racing circuits and competitions, focusing entirely on his performance and his character development. However, the moment his final scene was completed and he was released from his obligations, Dean's restraint evaporated. Just 2 days after finishing his last day of filming, Dean purchased a brand new silver Porsche 550 Spyder, a lightweight racing machine that represented the pinnacle of sports car performance in 1955. He nicknamed it Little Bastard and had the name painted on the back. Barely a week after buying the car, Dean entered it in a race scheduled for Salinas, California. On September 30th, 1955, while driving the Porsche from Los Angeles to the Salinas race venue, Dean was pulled over and ticketed for speeding. Just hours later, another car turned across the highway in front of him, near Cholome. The collision killed Dean almost instantly. He died at age 24, having kept his promise to Stevens, but surviving his obligation by less than 2 weeks. Fact 14, Warner Brothers' record held for 22 years. When Giant premiered in New York City on October 10, 1956, with a nationwide release following on November 24th, Warner Brothers had high hopes for the film, but couldn't have predicted just how successful it would become. The epic drama was a massive box office sensation, earning approximately $35 million in ticket sales during its original theatrical run, which translated to about $12 million in actual rental income for the studio. This made Giant not just a hit, but the biggest financial success in Warner Brothers' entire history up to that point. The studio had existed since the 1920s and had released hundreds of films, including numerous successful productions, but nothing had come close to matching Giant's enormous box office performance. The film's success was particularly impressive considering its controversial subject matter addressing racism, women's rights, and social change in Texas, topics that could have alienated audiences in some markets. The record Giant set in 1956 would stand for a remarkably long time. For 22 years, no other Warner Brothers film could surpass Giant's box office achievement. Productions came and went, stars rose and fell, entire filmmaking eras passed, but Giant remained the studio's all-time champion. The record finally fell in 1978 when Superman, starring Christopher Reeve, flew into theaters and surpassed Giant's long-standing benchmark. Even after losing the record, Giant remained a point of pride for Warner Brothers and a testament to the power of ambitious filmmaking. The film's financial success helped establish that serious, socially conscious epics could be commercially viable, paving the way for future prestige productions. Fact 15. The film inspired the creation of Dallas Giant's influence on American popular culture extended far beyond its theatrical release and Academy Award wins. The film's sweeping portrayal of Texas oil wealth, cattle ranching dynasties, family power struggles, and generational conflicts created a template that would be recycled and expanded in one of television's most successful primetime soap operas. Giant is widely credited as the direct inspiration for Dallas, the legendary television drama that dominated the 1980s and became a cultural phenomenon. Dallas debuted in 1978 and ran for 14 seasons, following the wealthy Ewing family and their oil empire centered around the South Fork Ranch. The parallels between Giant and Dallas are striking and unmistakable. Both stories feature powerful Texas patriarchs struggling to maintain control over sprawling ranching empires, the discovery of oil that brings new wealth and new problems, family members who clash over values and direction, the conflict between old cattle money and new oil money, and multiple generations dealing with changing social attitudes. Even visual elements echo each other, from the iconic mansion standing alone on vast Texas plains to the image of oil derricks dotting the landscape. The character of J.R. Ewing, Dallas's manipulative oil tycoon played by Larry Hagman, shares DNA with James Dean's Jet Rink character, though developed in opposite moral directions. Some observers noted that Hagman's character was even nicknamed JR, similar to James Dean's initials. The Texas setting, the themes of excessive wealth and moral corruption, and the multi-generational family saga structure all traced directly back to Giant's groundbreaking template. Dallas became one of the most watched television programs in history, proving that Giant's particular blend of Texas mythology, family drama, and oil wealth held enduring appeal for American audiences across multiple decades and different media formats.